Hello and welcome back to the Schooner Pod. I'm Bobby Howard. With me today, as always, we've got Jamison Maxwell and Ty Lee, and we inch ever closer to the opening of the Oklahoma football season. Guys, we are very close, a week away from Friday. And last week we covered the OU offense, took a look at the roster top to bottom. If you want to check that out, wait for the end of this video to check that one out. But it's up on our channel already and on your podcast feed. So give that a gander for that. But today we're talking about the defense. And I feel like when we talked yesterday or last time out on the Schooner Pod, the offense was a little bit more about uncertainty, about, not really sure how things are going to go. That's just kind of how that unit is. And it's a total 180 from how we've, kind of been throughout this podcast, throughout the time we've been podcasting the past 7 years, because this defense is rock solid, top to bottom. And I'm excited about talking about it, guys. But, what about like this transformation that Brent Venables has undergone in just 2 years? I mean, when was the last time we saw a defense this good in Norman?
It's you're gonna have to just postulate with it, because the way that this defense is, having two guys that can win national awards for, safety and linebacker, you got to close your eyes and think back to the early 2000s.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. Because, there have been some good teams, but, just talent-wise, this is as stacked as it's been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really fun season, and it's going to be almost, a breath of fresh air to have a good defense, because I feel like it's been such a thorn in our side as Oklahoma fans. And even with this development the past couple years, they always say defense wins championships, but just having a good defense that can bail you out for bad mistakes on offense just changes a football fan's stress so much.
Yeah, to retouch on an earlier question, you definitely would have to go back to the Bob Stoops era, I think, to even find this amount of hype for an OU defense. Obviously, yet to be proven product, but the headlines you see are just inconceivable on so many levels for an OU fan. Like the things that you're reading preseason about, our defense. Last week, the USA Today in their sports coverage had a headline, and again, preseason headlines, trying to generate some clicks and everything else. But Oklahoma's defense, one of the best in the SEC heading into next season, is just, take that to an OU fan 10 years ago. There's a lot to unpack there, obviously. But yeah, super, super, super exciting, and very excited to dive into this, because it's such an exciting group to put together, because you have those big names that have been here for a while. You got Danny Stutsman and Billy Bowman are both on the preseason AP All-American watch list. And then you got a ton of new guys coming in as well that are coming in to play. So super, super excited to see what we generate here. And then again, I have to mention it, and we mention it all the time, but Venables at Clemson obviously wasn't the head coach over there, obviously only controlled the defense, but those Clemson championship teams, the quarterbacks and everything else, get all the credit, but they had some monster D-lines and some monster defensive performances on those teams that were led by Venables. And it is very, very exciting to see what he's going to build here, because again, as a head coach, he's the head coach, but he is a guy who comes from the defensive side of the ball. And that's what we're going to start to see a big turnaround in before we see it on the offensive side, because that's his core competency. And that's where we're always going to recruit well with Venables as a head coach for right now.
Absolutely. And you can tell how much of an impact Venables had, especially defensively, on Clemson, given that they've been floundering since he left. So I think that's clearly a massive, he's clearly making a massive difference here at OU. Before we start about, really getting into the roster, going into position groups, we do have to note that much like the offense, the defense now has a new defensive coordinator. Gone is Ted Roof, a guy who really just kind of wore a baseball hat and, helped facilitate things. And in is Zach Alley, a pretty young DC. We've talked about him since the hire, but, any thoughts on Alley, Jameson?
I'm not going to be a broken record and say the same thing everyone's saying. All the players are saying it, the coaches are saying it. It's just a mini Venables. I'm not gonna dive into it. He's got a lot to prove, and I think in terms of high expectations for him this season, don't have him there. But it would be nice just to see a production from this defense and give him the credit. But in actuality, Venables still have the biggest fingerprints on this game.
Yeah, and I think having someone actively a little bit more engaged in the defense is going to help. Not someone you can trust to kind of be that hands-on and let you kind of be the head coach. I think that's important.
He needs it really bad, because there's still some things that that are red flags about Brent Venables that we heard the longest time. Like, did he harp too much on the defense? He got too much in the weeds there. He was trouble being the head coach rather than a defensive guy. He's too lengthy whenever he does his speeches. Hell, at this alumni thing this last week, whenever they had an open practice, Brent Venables was so late that some of the alumni left and didn't get to hear his speech. Like, that's concerning thing. So Brent Venables, although a good guy, there's some things that I get a little nervous whenever I hear stuff like that from him. So let him focus on the head coaching job, because if he's juggling too much, maybe he can't. And I think we need all the help we can get.
For sure. And there was a quote from, I think, Stutsman today he was on the franchise, and he said something to the effect of Brent, even mentioned, bringing up LSU in meetings, and we haven't even started the season yet, and they're our last game. So
he's got severe ADD. This guy is just all over the place.
We're in no place to diagnose that, but but no, he's definitely an interesting cat, and having someone a little bit more locked in on the present, a little bit able to kind of channel that energy is going to be big time. But Jameson, so
Ty's got something to say, and he's mad.
Ty, go ahead, man.
Did Ted Roof, quote, always wear a hat? Right? I don't know. The viewers have access to Google. That was a reference that flew over a lot of people's heads. But Bobby once claimed that Ted Roof always wore a certain hat.
No, that was
photographic evidence of this.
That was me talking about apple seed or whatever his name, turnip seed.
Turnip seed. No, I distinctly remember a Ted Roof. Does he wear a hat? Does he not? Argument that we've been on.
I don't even.
I swear he wears a baseball hat.
No, this was a Bobby thing. This was a Bobby
thing. I definitely said that earlier.
No,
this was
I remember
me thing.
You're getting the Thad turnip seed, whatever thing confused. But Zach Alley, exciting. It is still funny that his only photo on the web or on Wikipedia, I guess, is from his time at ULM, and it looks like a deposition from 1997. Even though he's 23 years old. But I think neither of those are my actual point that I wanted to make. So we might as well just roll on, because I have completely forgotten.
Yeah, for sure. So, Ty, you brought up earlier the defensive line, and let's just go ahead and start with that, Jameson.
Yeah, let's go into it, because this is the most fun one to talk about, to be honest. This is the one that will ratchet this defense into an elite category or push it down into an average category, even though we've got talent at the second and third levels. Because the interior defensive line, I feel pretty good about. The addition of Dominic Williams in the offseason was so needed, because that just took the inside of the defensive line to a concerning spot to I feel okay with it. And there's a very upward mobility there, having him at the defensive tackle. And then you would think DJ Terry would come out as the starting nose tackle next to him. But the way that they've been talking about Jaden Jackson in camp, the way he's been playing at nose and the inside, that if he goes out there and he wins the starting job early, or hell, even shows up on play one, the amount of hype you heard about him and the amount of crickets you've heard about DJ Terry, I would not be surprised at all about that.
I mean, for me, I think overall this was a unit that at the start of the offseason was definitely a little bit dodgy, a little bit up in the air. But it's they're going to have to, I don't want to say rely on youth, but they don't have to rely on youth anymore because of Dominic Williams, which I think will be great. And I mean, look, Jaden Jackson is apparently very impressive, and I am excited to see how he plays a little bit. But again, I don't think that's a position you can rely on youth. We have a lot of talent, a lot of size, but it's going to take a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Jaden Jackson's biggest thing may not come to those of like watching the games the first couple times, because really what it seems like he's just gobbling up space in the middle and just destroying, the interior of the offensive line. It gives those outside defensive ends time to like, opportunity to work, which is so crucial for this team. We'll get in the defensive ends. Like the defensive ends have been lacking on the pass rush so much these past season and a half to 2 seasons. Like really concerning things to where we need a big year from at least one of these guys. And if we can get really big time guys on the inside to provide the opportunity to the outside guys to kind of, look a little bit better than they have in the past, that's going to be so crucial.
Yeah. Jamison, you might know off the top of your head, or Bobby, you might know off the top of your head, but wasn't it like a 5-game streak last year where we just had no rushes or sacks from the D-line?
Well, it was
a pretty brutal streak.
And near the end of the season, I think it was maybe like 1 sack. I think it was because I did a stat on one of our past.
It was like after Texas, there was just
it was like an Ethan Downs like random sack or something. Because if you look at our sack leaders, like you had Ethan Downs, but then like Danny Stutsman's like right up there next after that. Like it's it's kind of embarrassing to really where our sacks were. And that's not like throwing out the bolt. Pull it up, Bobby, for me, the sack leaders while I'm talking, because I know I'm not 100% on that, because we checked it throughout the time last season, and it was just an honestly embarrassment from our defensive line and our defensive ends. They couldn't get to the quarterback. Marcus Stripling had some things, but that was like all in like, just like whenever it didn't matter anymore. Ari Mason Thomas got pressures but never finished the plays.
Right. And I want to point out that pressure thing. Okay, because we, at one point in this offseason, said something like we didn't create enough pressure, and someone railed on us in the comments because they're like, oh, we get so many pressures. Britt said we have so many pressures. That's fine. And we did, but we didn't convert it into sacks, which is kind of important. You kind of need to get that part. And that's something we clearly struggled with. I'm pulling up the stats right now for total.
I've got it. So it was 4.5 for Ethan Downs. Danny was next at 3, and then Stripling at 2.5. I looked at this like a couple months ago. I knew there was something around there. That's embarrassing. And then after that, Jaron Kanik with 2 out of linebacker, Kendall Dolby with 2. And then PJ had 1.5. Like that's just our Mason Thomas having 1 sack last year is an absolutely embarrassment, and it's not an acceptable thing. To be honest with you, I want to finish talking about the interior and kind of talking about 2 and 3 deep. But our Mason Thomas, I forget PJ and what his star ratings was. I think if our Mason Thomas does that again this year, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. Like I think that I'm really leaning on him to be a guy to take a step.
For sure. And I mean, our Mason Thomas is a guy who, we've seen promising bits of, and we've seen flashes, but he needs to put it together. At this point, this is, he's an experienced guy, and it's one where you're going to be going up against a lot. I realize that the difficulty is going to ramp up, especially on the offensive lines in the SEC. But those pressures got to convert, and I think our Mason Thomas is one of those guys who you have to circle and be like, all right, you're a vet, leans on you,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How many of these pressures are legitimate pressures where by your eyeballs, yes, did it make the quarterback roll out? But is it going to be considered a statistical pressure? Yeah. But how much was legitimate that changed the play? I don't know how to equate that, and I'm just postulating here, guys. But it just by the eyeball test, even if we did have enough pressures, it wasn't looking like we were impacting the quarterback that much.
It was like, oh, we almost got him, and
wow, good job.
They threw it for a 5-yard gain. Oh well, but you almost had him. You'll get him next time, guys. That doesn't do anything.
Really appreciate. Oh, sorry, Bobby.
No, Ty, you got it.
I was just going to say I do really appreciate us applying the eye test to completely objective stats.
Yep. You're damn right.
Because it's like
just
We
wait
know
till I
football.
implement that. I'm going to implement that on my quarterback hate this year. I'm going to be like, we established the eye test. That doesn't count as a
But,
completion.
there's to a point, and we say this a lot, where we have watched so much football in our life that we can kind of have just like this inkling of if a player is really good or if they don't have the stats, or if there's like an incredible, like pressure of the defense that you can tell that they've got it, but maybe they might not have a high sack number. Maybe they might not have a high interception number, but you can tell like this is a lockdown defense. With us last year, I don't care what the pressures are. I just had that feeling where there was a deficiency in our pass rush to where we could get picked apart really easily. And that's just not acceptable. And it's something that needs to fix. The interior, the defensive line needs to make the jobs of these outside guys easier, because the outside defensive end, our defensive ends, even though you want to tell me Ethan Downs is, a veteran, he's great in the run game, but in the pass rush, that is by far our worst position on the defense, in my opinion. If you talk like too deep on the interior, these are guys going to be very, very important, because, we talk starters, but like we rotate big guys in and out. You got to keep them fresh. Say if we already kind of talked about three of them with DJ, Terry, Jane Jackson, and then Dominic on the other side. But people love to talk about Grayson Halton for multiple seasons now as like a guy that, he can make the next step. I don't care what I hear in the offseason. I've heard that for multiple seasons now. I want to see him do it, but I'm not going to speculate on it until we actually see it in a legitimate game, because he hasn't done it yet. You can be a practice player. There's guys out there that are practice players. You can look good in the offseason, but this is a clear opportunity for a guy like Grayson Halton to go make a move as a junior, and he needs to go out and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just I don't want to compare him to Marcus Major, but it's one of those situations where it's like, come on, man, like it's time, you got to make the leap. And he's not getting that same level of hype that Marcus Major's inexplicably
Marcus
got
Major
every single
was
year.
Starting and getting touchdowns for a hot second there.
Yeah. He was playing a ton last year. Yeah, but no, Halton needs to show up and really perform for sure.
Next kind of guys, David Stone will be fun to see in the 3 deep. He will get some run. Ashton Champ Sanders should get some run. Maybe we might see a little Devon Sears, my favorite guy from Texas State. But we've got a good depth in that room. We were worried about the top end talent before we got Dominic Williams. Now we kind of have that. So I feel confident and comfortable with that interior defensive line group right now. Is the ceiling with it super high? Maybe not, but I think that there's some fun things where we have some great upward mobility with our young guys moving forward. Let's talk about defensive end, because we kind of already touched on it a little bit. R. Mason Thomas, I think, is probably, if you had to ask me, and I might talk about this on next week's podcast when we kind of talk about X factors moving into the season, R. Mason Thomas is probably my X factor for almost, maybe I wouldn't even consider offense and defense, which is a super hot take. Like I need a guy on the defensive end to go out and become a force. We say, who gets paid the big bucks in the NFL? Shut down man corners, defensive ends who can rush the quarterback. And it's great to have an inside linebacker and great to have a safety who's the best players on your defense. But those are guys in the NFL don't get paid as much as the pass rushers and the cornerback. So we need to go find a guy who can get to the quarterback. R. Mason Thomas, I think, can be that guy, because Ethan Downs, I think we already know what we're going to get. He's going to play really well against the run. He's going to bull rush some guys, get to the quarterback. He's going to be technically sound. He's not going to be a weakness for our team, but he's not a guy who can get the motor going, get around the edge fast, and destroy a quarterback within seconds. That's not, you're not going to see that commonly in SEC play with Ethan Downs.
Yeah, I've liked Downs. I've definitely liked Downs, but I don't know. I feel like he had performances in big moments like Texas. He was great against Texas. Almost got us a couple unsportsmanlike conduct penalties that game. But overall, if you look at his body of work, it was not the the best. It was not like he was doing that week in, week out on the ends there. But I don't think it's too intense to say that he would be like that. Our Mason Thomas is like that X factor, but I think definitely someone off the edge could be. Caden Woolyard, for example, I think could make an impact. Obviously was very good for Miami of Ohio in the MAC, but a little bit different. Trace Ford had a couple moments here and there as well off the end. So I think I am with you that I think the edge is going to be crucial. The edge.
What kind of moments? Senior moments? Like what do you mean Trace Ford having moments off the edge?
I don't know, a couple, like a little spotty here there.
I don't know. I wasn't a big Trace Ford guy last year.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Where did Trace Ford come from, Jameson?
Oh, now it's making sense.
Okay.
This is a guy who got to see him whenever he was
okay.
Really
That's backwards.
Good
Wouldn't I just be? Look, if I was an OSU sleeper agent, wouldn't I just be the biggest Trace Ford hater?
Well, no, I think
Not
you
if he's
truly
a fellow
got to
sleeper
see.
agent.
Well, there we go.
Well, if he's a fellow sleeper agent. We're both part of the same cell.
He's making a compelling argument. But yeah, I think it's fun to say at the defensive end position, like hopefully we can have some guys that can go out and, make some big time plays. We keep on holding out hype for PJ. He still seems like from the practice reports, still taking a little bit to kind of get those things, because you guys got to remember, like, his football experience is not nearly as high as some of these guys coming out who are big time 5-star prospects. Some of these 5-star prospects have been through camp since they were in middle school. Like PJ came into the sport late, and we knew that he was going to be a developmental project. It's okay if you're starting to be a little bit tentative on the hype for him anymore, because maybe we overdid it a little bit. We hadn't got a guy with that kind of recruiting numbers at the defensive end position in a while, and it was kind of a fun time to where we wanted to hype him up because the intangibles were there, and you can't teach intangibles. But there's still a lot for him to learn, and I still think he's going to have a good, he's going to have multiple plays this year where it's going to be like, damn. And he's going to make a huge impact for us. In terms of consistency, I'm still not ready to put my, eggs in that basket, but I still think he's a really fun guy. And if you're talking about depth on the defensive end line, that's a really fun guy to have there. I don't know if he's going to be the X factor that I'm kind of putting into our Mason Thomas.
I would like him to be by the end of the year. Obviously everyone wants this, but I would hope that he's significantly better by the end of the season. Like once coming on at that point. Like I'm just saying, like I think a lot of too many people have been trying to just shed their PJ Adebaware stock, and to me, like let's stop freaking out a little bit. He's a sophomore, still very young. I think he can definitely improve and get to that place. And I think by the end of the year, he's going to be a lot better.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say on the outside, especially on containing, but this was kind of obviously a D-line overall point. But, as we continue to talk about these guys, right, like it's beyond important. Like when you touch on some of the stars that we're going to be playing on the other side of the ball, right? Like Jackson Dart, obviously in his 15th year of college football, Jalen Milroe, Texas, whether they're starting their backup or whether they're starting their starter Arch Manning, will be hard to deal with either way. But then like running backs too, I was doing some research. South Carolina, not a traditionally super powerful team. One of the best running backs in the SEC over there with Raheem Sanders, same with Auburn, with Hunter. So it's our ability to contain people, you guys are talking about on the outside and with the pressures.
I feel very confident in our run defense, especially the way Danny Stutsman plays the run and our linebackers, and then Dominic Williams and Jane Jackson and DJ Terry in the middle taking up space. Really, it's like that's why we spent pretty much this whole topic talking about the pass rush with it, because that's just something that we know that there's a deficiency. I think some kind of honorable mentions, in terms of the defensive ends, is could we see anything from a guy like Danny Okoye, because he's been really playing with the third unit only in practice, but when he goes out with the third unit, it's not even fair. And that's another developmental guy. This is a dude who played homeschool football Like he's still got a lot to do, but he's an absolute physical specimen. He could be a really fun guy, and I think like he's the type of guy where come third quarter, if we're playing Temple and there's like 5 minutes left to go in the third, we're up by 31. You see Danny Okoye come out there. He could be a guy you could hear on the Jumbotron getting a sack right off the bat in the first game. Like I expect that from him.
Yeah, I would love that because from what I hear about Okoye, he is legit. He's just young, and I think that's the case with a lot of the D line. This is a unit, the units that Ty were talking about that really made a mark on Clemson. We have some of those guys on the roster right now. They're just, not old enough. They haven't developed to that point yet.
And that's what it's supposed to be like as a defensive line too. It's a mature position. It's like the offensive line, except for guys like Caden Green who are once in a lifetime kind of offensive guard prospects. But screw that. All in all, it's going to be a very interesting position at the defensive end. I'm really excited to see it moving forward. The inside linebacker, let's move into them, and then we'll kind of hit cheetah after that. Is the inside linebacker position that is a position where I just feel so confident, and I feel like I'm at the buffet. Like I'm going, and this ain't the Golden Corral. This is not China King buffet. No, this is like these nice buffets where I'm getting crab legs and I'm getting some nice stuff here because you're already gonna get. I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna get my nice crab legs, Danny Stutsman. We're getting the crab legs.
You're at the Bacchanal at Caesar's Palace.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Yeah, exactly. You're getting the lobster tail and you're going back for seconds.
Exactly. So do I want to make Danny my main course, my Mike linebacker? Even though maybe at weak side linebacker he might be a little bit better. Maybe my crab legs could be a pretty good auxiliary position to it. Do I want to put a guy like Kobe McKenzie, who's been great at Mike linebacker, and put him next to Danny? Or do you think that Kobe, even though he's not maybe number 3 or number 4 skill ranked in our linebackers, he'd be a great linebacker too to come in and command that defense. And we can put in, a guy at will next to a Mike for Danny, and like Kip Lewis or Lewis Carter. Like Kip Lewis, man, he's the guy that whenever he was out there, he was all over the place, an extreme athlete, was an absolute playmaker. And Lewis Carter is just a star waiting to happen. I pick and choose your flavor here. You're not going to go wrong. I will not hear any argument and discredit it. If you tell me any combination of Danny and those 3 other guys, I will probably discredit a little bit if you want to say Jaron Kanik. But any of those 3 other guys, if you want to put them next to Danny, I'm happy with that.
Credit to Kanik for sticking with this because I think he adds a lot of depth. And, I hope he can keep working at it and get kind of back, into that rotation. But that's going to be damn hard. Like you said, Jameson, it is just stacked with Kobe McKenzie, with Kip Lewis, who came on so strong last year as such a vital piece, especially when Stutsman went down. But no, this linebacking core is just so legit.
Yeah, I feel like this is, I know this is the second year. I feel like this is maybe the 3rd year in a row where we've touched on this linebacker group as, hey, this is it. And I know in years past we had really, really good linebacker groups as well because we kind of just had to rely on them, especially back in the dark days of Alex Grinch defenses. But it's super, super exciting to just discuss the depth that we have there, again, because of the stars that we're going to be facing on the other side of the ball so consistently week after week. And again, we face that in the Big 12 as well, right? Like we face guys like Ollie Gordon. We face guys like, Alan Bowman and such in the Big 12 as well. So like Alan Bowman would be a 5-6-time national champion if he could just get into the Georgia program. But it's super, super exciting to discuss the depth like we have. Like the D-line, not to go back to that, but tremendous depth, but it's a lot of very, very young guys and then some imported guys to sort of, provide that mentorship and that guidance as we build up a program that can build from the ground up and sort of generate and develop D linemen from the ground up, which I think we're, like we said, very well on the path to. The linebackers are just ahead of that right now. We have guys who've been in our program, been in our system, done the transition with the head coaches, and are really, guys like Danny Stutsman obviously hit their stride last year, and will just continue to develop this year. And our linebacking core is super, super cool. And I know I'm going kind of long here, but it's a group that, as a group, obviously the individuals that will continue to dive in here, but as a group, they pull up everyone around them. They not only are the best ones out there as a group, but they make everyone else perform better just by their presence. Like the culture that they bring to the field and the vibe, whatever you want to call it, outside of just performance, they amplify everyone's performance around them. And that's super, super exciting. And like Jameson said, you can mix and match that group. You can plug in some younger guys, get them experience. We can, be creative with having tremendous depth there where you can not have to worry as much about getting them worn down, because you truly can. Like, this is a group where we truly can rotate people around and not have to worry about a massive drop in production. And it's going to be so cool to see these guys play.
Yeah, it's the great thing about linebackers, what we're saying about it right now. Every season with Brent Venables, these linebackers have played young and they've done great young. And then these big time guys like Danny have taken a big jump each season. So what we're talking about them right now, I won't be surprised if it's even on a next level with these inside linebackers. I feel very, very, very confident in this group. Really, other than that, I don't even think we need to talk too much about the other deep people. We'll just kind of see the Pichottis and a little bit of Kanik, maybe Nesta in the future. But I think those four guys and then maybe adding Kanik into there, I think that's really it for those inside. Let's kind of move into cheetah, because I feel like now this is, if you're going to talk about a position that I know what I'm going to get from it, but I wish it was a little bit better, it would be the cheetah. I really like Kendall Dolby. I really do. But at the same time, I wish there was a bigger guy that could really fulfill the vision of what's truly is the cheetah. I feel like Dolby does a really damn good job for what he is at the position. But he's not the perfect glove fit, like not the Isaiah Simmons in the back of the Clemson days of how that fits that position. You thought that could have been Deshaun McCullough, but the dude's got bricks for feet. Anytime a wide receiver or running back turns in one direction, he can't turn his hips to the other way. And he's been hurt for the majority of this offseason, guys. So if you're telling me I have any confidence if there's going to be a person contending for this cheetah position behind Kendall Dolby, I won't tell you I have it. So if you're going to talk about the depth of this position, I'm a little bit worried. I feel good with Kendall Dolby because he's another guy who pops off the page, but could Sammy Omasiko come in and be that kind of guy? Possibly. Could any of these young safeties kind of get some run over at the cheetah and make some big time plays there? That's what I'm really interested in. And hopefully we'll kind of see Venables whenever my hope is whenever we get towards the end of the season and we have distinguished between Peyton Bowen and Robert Spear Jennings, and we're not getting, them as much on the field as possible, but we realize they are one of the 11 best players. Hopefully to give Kendall Dolby some rest, we start to see guys like Peyton Bowen or RSJ who aren't playing as much in that second safety position to come down to just keep your best players on the field. Right.
And I believe we saw Bowen slot into that role a little bit towards the end of last year as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it is disappointing to, how McCullough has, kind of not been healthy and, his unfortunate limitations when he's not just going downhill and in attack mode. We had a lot of hype for him, and it's not over or anything, but that lateral quickness needs to improve, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And we even had some strength in that department last year, but got banged up early, with Harrington, who has transferred out since. So I don't know. There's not really a perfect answer at Cheetah, but it's but you have a couple answers, and you just hope they find a way.
Mm-hmm. we're kind of, and it's one of those unfortunate things, right? Because we're trying to fit guys into this mold of the cheetah position, and it's one of those things where I don't necessarily see where the coaching staff is going with this, right? Because cheetah is great, right? Cheetah is great, but rather diminutive for a big cat, and they are the fastest. But what we need is a jaguar. We need a jaguar position. They're the second fastest big cat, right? A little bit slower than the cheetah, much larger though, and much more fierce. And that's really what we need. We need the size, and we need someone like cheetahs aren't even necessarily an apex predator, arguably not even a keystone predator in their habitats. Look that one up on your free time. If you went to Oklahoma State, Bobby will put it in the description so you can kind of sound it out. But I know that is an ag school, so they're probably actually triply offended by that one. But we need a jaguar position, right? We need that size and, sacrifice some of the speed, but you can get in there and just really be an ambush predator in that position. So
cheetahs also are one of the few big cats that meow like a house cat. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Ty. Like, they'll just go meow. Like, it's wild. It does not sound like that noise should come out of a big cat.
Not the right mindset. They don't have the right mindset. That's just off the field distractions and the rat poison in the cheetahs, just not the right culture for our team.
What's that old quote from the old Coastal Carolina coach? We don't need no cats in the house. We need some dogs. We don't need no meows.
Exactly. Yeah,
I think this might be one of the best times that you've had actually making a random off the wall correlation, Ty. This makes sense. This one just hit.
You just understand.
Landed. Yeah.
A lot of the other ones kind of.
Man, look at Ty. He's smiling ear to ear. He feels so accomplished that he actually did it. He's impressed.
They hit every time. The internet defends me. Sometimes you guys don't get it. The internet has never frowned on one of my sides.
That's completely correct. I think that's really it with the cheetah position. Kendall Dolby will be the guy, but I'm really curious to see how that position's gonna change throughout the season. Moving into the DBs, I say we can just go into safety because we kind of already touched them a little bit. Billy Bowman, he is absolutely exceptional. And we are so thankful that we get him for one last season. He's slotted in number one no matter what. But the great part is we kind of have, a little cornucopia of safeties here. You get a little bit of everything. You get, you got Robert Spears Jennings, now in his junior season. It feels like he just is one of the most, I wouldn't say underrated, but underappreciated guys on this defense, because we had all of the hype in the world for Peyton Bowen. And we're like, oh, we want Peyton Bowen on the field as much as possible as a true freshman. But Robert Spears Jennings last year was like, nah, this is my spot, man. I'm going to keep on taking it. And he goes out there and he makes plays and he does what he needs to do. And it's at the point where him and Peyton are going, mano-a-mano to where who's going to be the starting guy that first game. I can't tell you. I really can't. It's a coin flip. I think, I'd probably lean towards Peyton just because how talented he is. But, if it's RSJ out there starting next to Billy, I'm not surprised in the slightest. And that's what's great about this. You get a little bit of everything. We'll talk about, some of the extra side dishes in our cornucopia of the young guys to come.
There aren't side dishes at a cornucopia. It's just a bunch of fruits.
Sort of gives.
I don't know. That's
precedence to all dishes.
Well, it's small fruits. Small fruits. Smaller fruits.
Yeah, it's like the Fruit of the Loom, logo or whatever.
I guess a secondary or tertiary fruit.
Yes. Can we do a tier rank?
We're not talking like a grape, but maybe like a grapefruit.
Grapefruit's a bad fruit.
It is. I agree. But grapes are S tier.
Okay, but maybe
are we putting grapes at the top of the list? Are grapes our best tier?
Perhaps like a raspberry. Perhaps like a raspberry.
I like a good raspberry.
Those get stuck in your teeth. I don't like it as much.
Yes, but it's not hard to argue that raspberries are a secondary fruit.
They are.
No, it definitely is secondary. It's definitely a secondary fruit.
Big 12 fruit.
So Billy Bowman is S tier grapes. Grapes are my favorite. our Robert Spears Jennings and Peyton Bowen are A tiers, and then we got some guys that could have potential. We got some guys that can grow up to some big boy fruits later in the future. They're just still on the vine.
The A tier fruit would be like a strawberry. That actually might even be like an S tier fruit.
Strawberries are pretty close to S.
That actually might. That's
right.
Kind of tough.
My bad. I keep on doing food analogies, Ty. I'm sorry. I guess that's all I've got in my repertoire.
You should,
Jameson.
You should know better.
Bobby.
You should know better that we wouldn't that we would get completely sidetracked by discussing fruit. But I think without a doubt, this safety unit is just unbelievable. Spears Jennings has been incredible, and obviously, like being good enough to push Peyton Bowen off of that spot is impressive, because Bowen was very, very damn good. And whoever we got in that spot is going to be pretty solid. It does kind of help that you can kind of move Bowen around, that he's versatile enough where you don't have to have him at safety. So I think that might be a benefit towards Spears Jennings winning that spot. But in terms of sheer talent, in terms of upside, I think all the way down the line, it's probably Bowen to be in that spot. But I don't know. We're in good hands in this position, and we used to very much not be. I don't want to make it a streak of or Brendan Radley Hiles references, but it was not too long ago that that guy was like supposed to be the anchor of that unit. So yeah, it's come a long way where we have almost an embarrassment of riches. So it's exciting.
I will say one thing, obviously, Robert Spears Jennings in particular came to OU back in, 2021? But for some reason, this is an important aside. For some reason, I've been deleting my notes here as we've gone on, so I've now forgotten the names. But several guys on the D-line, in addition to Robert Spears Jennings, all Tulsa area recruits, which I think is really important, because OU's always sort of held down the OKC Metro pretty well in recruiting, but for a long time under Lincoln Riley, we sort of neglected that region. And obviously this is a weird aside in the context of the secondary, but Spears Jennings, again, not a Venables recruit, but guys on the D-line and everything else, our ability to, under Venables, hold down the state. Like, we should have our choice, not saying that we're obligated to, like some people might say, take or offer which we do offer, but take every good player that comes out of the state of Oklahoma. But we should have a first pick. And it's exciting to see guys like Spears Jennings who come in, put in the work in practice, weren't the presumptive last year, and then just perform, and they get a real chance. And, the guys behind him get a real chance as well. And it's not a situation of, well, hey, man, like, good job in practice, but we promised this guy this. Like, seeing people come from across the state, anywhere really, but particularly across the state, and get to put in work and get a fair chance at this team, like, that stuff, people see that. Big-time recruits see that. And that's a really, really important thing if we can continue to establish a meritocracy. I know that's kind of an aside off the safeties, which we'll get back into, but that was a talking point of mine that I forgot to bring up earlier, and he kind of brought it back up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good point. It's fun to cheer for a hometown hero. So even though we have all of this, love towards Peyton of him rescinding his, his signing, even though he forgot to sign on the whatever it was, and getting it, providing all the excitement to OU with a last minute get. It's also great to cheer for the Oklahoma guys. Moving into safeties, I mean, keeping on the safeties, I think that a guy that I talked about in the comments already, and that a lot of the OU media and podcasters, message boards, all kind of talk about a young guy that can be great in the future. I think either Teddy or Gabe talked about on their most recent podcast is how good Michael Boganowski's look. And you could see it even in the spring game. Whenever I was there, I was like, you could tell the responsibility and what they're already seeing very quickly out of a guy like Boganowski from this coaching staff was a big time. And this was a guy that, you look at his recruiting, like this isn't, we had to compete versus like Kansas State for him, so like wasn't really like a big get. It's looking like a kind of guy to where like he's got a great body type for a safety and he's got some good athleticism and he just comes downhill and he hits people hard. And it seems like this coaching staff falling in love with him. If you're looking for true freshmen right here to make big plays, think about him and then Peyton Bowen, his little brother, over at the cornerback, Eli Bowen. Like those two guys have been making a lot of, run this off season and really turning some heads. All right. You got anything, Bobby?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was on mute, but I didn't talk. So halfway got it right. I think to me, Boganowski, you hear the reports, we read the same stuff, that he is going to be a stud, to say the least. Might not be the main guy just because of how packed this is this year, but that's a name to watch out for sure if you're a Sooner fan. There are always those names that pop up, during the season. We're like, wait a minute, like I hadn't heard of this guy really that much before. That's a guy who you should circle for sure.
Yeah, I'm so excited to take these opinions from other people and make my own opinions during the season, because it really, in all honesty, like you said, Bobby, you read the same stuff. Our listeners, a lot of them are reading the same stuff. I'm just regurgitating a lot of it. But then there's going to be certain eye test things. Like, I saw in the spring game a little bit, Boganowski looked good. So maybe I'm a little partial just to the small sample size. But these first couple of games, these are these type of young guys where they're going to get out and they're going to turn some heads and make some moves. So I feel like we're going to see a lot from guys like, Reggie Powers, Jaden Hardy, Boganowski, Eli Bowen, this young freshman DB class. I think they'll get a lot of run, and we'll start to see a couple of them to be like, hey, these guys are the future of this DB room in for Oklahoma into the next 2025, 2026 and beyond seasons. Shall we end off with, actually, I'm not going to say end off because we're going to add special teams into this conversation. And I know Ty's got some things to say. Yes. And let me tell you, this kicker battle is starting to heat up again and I'm getting nervous. But let's talk about cornerbacks to end it. And I failed to mention this in the safety conversation, but I feel like the conversation of Woody Washington is going to be really interesting because, there were some reports, some of the insiders of like, is Woody Washington going to be the answer at cornerback? And I don't think it has to do with his skill. I think Woody Washington and the coaching staff have looked introspectively, and he wasn't very happy with his draft grade in the offseason and decided to come back. Is it time for Woody to try other things and show some versatility within his game to, become a guy that can be drafted as, a fifth or sixth rounder that you believe? I feel good about Woody going into the slot. I feel Woody could play in the safety room. That's kind of guys in Woody's breed to where he needs that versatility on his resume. And so I would not be surprised at all if we start to shift Woody around into this defense, especially with the second units and whatnot, into these different positions to see if he can do it to help him out. Yes, It might be helpful for this team to show that early. But in all honesty, these coaches will do what they need to do to make Oklahoma great. But they need to always think about what can I do to set up my players for success in their future, and Woody needs to go see some other positions.
Yeah. What he really needs is an NIL deal that has enough that he can take $70 a month and set that aside. And what that's going to get him is LinkedIn Premium. So he can really get access to different recruiters.
Man, I've been such a Woody believer, and then just every single week it's just me versus Ty. Can you imagine me on one side cheering for Woody, a guy that's been great for us for multiple years now, and Ty being a hater, and then I have to be the hater of Austin Stogner last year? What two sides do you want to pick there?
Yeah.
Be on the Woody side or the Austin Stogner side?
Which is unfortunate because I believe in Woody Washington as much as you do, Jameson. It's just so much easier to hate on defensive players. And I do, unfortunately. There's no one on this defense that I hate.
Yeah, who's going to be your hate? Who's going to be your hater? Is it going to still be Woody, or are you going to find somebody?
It's not Woody, but I just don't understand this. Stogner's not a hateable person, so I don't really understand. Caught the ball every time it was thrown to him.
Tune into our Temple preview to find out, or recap to find out. He will
We'll win
decide.
by 47 and just I'll have a massive bone to pick with some random defenders. So.
It's gonna happen.
For sure. No,
someone will give up a 10-yard run that allows them to score a field goal and ruin our shutout, and I'll have a vendetta against that man for life.
I mean, the thing is, Woody, it's tricky because obviously him coming back was a big deal, really helpful. But, and if you're not going to be that guy in corner, if there are better options and there are better options for him as a player, then yeah, you should explore that. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with that corner position with, if Gentry Williams can freaking stay healthy, for example.
That's a big thing.
That's a big one. Will a younger guy like Jacoby Johnson step up and have a big performance? You're hearing good stuff about that, here and there at a camp. But
picking off Jackson Arnold left and right.
apparently, so it's his fault that everyone's hey, Michael Hawkins might be paying him to get them interceptions for him. Who knows?
I do want to say I want to sandwich the Woody Washington discussion with an important note. And right, this isn't. I didn't cook this up. This came from my pre-pod research. But Woody Washington is very well liked and has a tremendous depth of experience. I read a couple articles actually talking about some of the players and some of the coaches even coming to him and asking him about certain things, because again, this is a guy who has reps in practice, has experience going against Jalen Hurts, obviously a tremendous quarterback in the NFL, CeeDee Lamb, obviously tremendous receiver in the NFL, a great friend of the pod. I don't think he knows about us, but friend of the pod. He's going to come through. He's waiting on his employer to pay him.
We're currently in the parasocial part of the relationship.
We're actually caught in the middle of his contract negotiations currently, so we can't talk about it too much. But I forgot where I was going. Oh yeah, but tremendous experience, tremendously well-liked guy, which is always something that you love to see with what we're trying to do with this team, especially when we have such a young room otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really excited about this room, what it can be with Jacoby Johnson, Bobby. Like, that's the type of athlete and body type that can be, one of the best cornerbacks in the country if he continues to learn and put things together. Remember, this guy was like a basketball player. This guy's just a pure athlete, and he's just coming into this cornerback position. I'm excited. If Gentry can't go, seems like Kenai Walker continues this steadfast kind of great cornerback that just does all the right things. I feel very confident in him. Des Malone, this is a guy getting him as a transfer, has been there and played, multiple seasons of college football. I feel pretty good about him there too. A couple of the young guys, we already talked about Eli Bowen. It seems like he keeps turning heads and impressing. So you could even see him on the field pretty early. Makari Vickers, I feel like I haven't heard a lot about him, but, this is a guy that kind of got thrown into the fire last year as a true freshman. And so I think we already named like 5 or so guys that we feel fairly confident in the cornerback room. And that's really what you need right there. That's like the magic number. Yeah. So you guys want to talk special teams? Because I do.
Oh boy.
Because this kicking position, I thought Tyler Keltner had it no matter what. And all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom. Now Zach Smith is making a last minute, run for Tyler Keltner's job. I don't know what I think about that. You know what that tells me? Tyler Keltner really ain't doing it right now, because it takes a lot to come back from what Zach Schmidt did last year. There's no way Venables and, this coaching staff is thinking, you know what? Let's go back to Zach Schmidt. I want to deal with all of this bad rap that we got from the fan base again. They are trying to find a reason to not put Zach Schmidt on the field, but they are not finding it near coming into the fall season, to where I still think, Zach Schmidt shouldn't be out there on week 1, but it seems like Tyler Keltner's kind of fudging it up right now, and I'm worried.
Current working theory is that Tyler Keltner kicked a burrito, because that would really explain the drop off.
No burritos.
But,
I want
burritos.
What is a food item that Zach Schmidt could kick that could let him go out for his career?
Pineapple.
Pineapple.
Actually, pineapple is a little bit too symmetrical. Or if you cut off the top.
A banana.
Ty, I'm sure you can answer this. You got something for me here?
A banana, but horizontal.
He
So it's like
slides on the banana like a Mario Kart. Whoa!
He's kicking like it's not like this. Like he's kicking it like this. For those that are listening.
Yeah, like how some kickers will kick their onsides weird where they put the football on its side, where it like does a spinny thing. Have you ever seen that?
I think me and Bobby are in a different plane than you are right now. I
think we're all three in a different universe.
I'm just
currently.
Yeah, no.
NIL deal for
Peels.
Schmidt. Yeah, well, Zach Schmidt.
I have
if
some
you kick a
thoughts
banana
on the
for the
kicker,
pod. How much money does Zach Schmidt need to kick a banana on camera?
No. But no, I think if we really want to talk about it, Schmidt is doing what a lot of kickers do, which is they look great in practice. And when you're watching them kick over and over again in practice in the offseason, you're like, you know what, maybe they're not so bad. Maybe they can actually get it done. Jimmy Stevens did this all the time. You had a couple kickers who just couldn't get it done in game, but looked incredible in practice. And I mean, I saw one kick out of Schmidt, and I will say I see where they're coming from. He just kicked an absolute belter, but a game is different, so we'll see. Ty?
I'm sorry, this is very important. This is completely not on the topic of what we're talking about, but shout out to Timothy, our West Virginia fan in the chat, and then also Jimmy. Jimmy said something very important to Timothy, talking about their out-of-conference games. He said, I hope y'all beat Penn State, who they're playing out of conference this year, and then upset Bama next year. Jimmy, shout out to you for understanding that West Virginia beating Penn State would not be an upset because Penn State is not a good team and should not be given any respect, whereas West Virginia beating Bama would, of course, be an upset as they are expected to be the better team. So shout out to Timothy. West Virginia is, in fact, much better than Penn State. Tune into the weekend spread for that. Back to the kickers. I do have some thoughts when you finish, Bobby.
I was gonna say I'm sorry, Ty. We have week one. We're gonna be all on Timothy's side, rooting for West Virginia. I don't think there's a single Penn State fan among us. So little spoiler there, but we're probably gonna be real big on the Mountaineers there. Timothy also suggested that he kicks a watermelon, which I appreciate. That he.
Mm-hmm. Ty, what
go
else
ahead.
You got on this kicking position? What do you think? Who's going to be out there week one?
So, obviously, not obvious. Some of you might not know this. I was the first to break this on the pod. In fact, this news was announced while we were recording a pod, and I started rambling about it, and no one knew what I was talking about. But Tyler Keltner came from Florida State. And that's important because what do we know about Florida State last year? Obviously, went undefeated, left out of the playoffs. Whole thing about that. Anyone who follows college football, even casually, has heard that story. A wise man, a very wise man, a friend of Bobby and I's, once said he doesn't want to be involved with unlucky people. And Florida State is just inherently unlucky. And because of I've been enlightened to our wise friend Thomas's ways. And I just don't want someone, especially a kicker, who's just inherently unlucky because Florida State just got unlucky that their quarterback was injured and they were left out of the playoffs. I don't want someone who's unlucky on my team, let alone as my kicker. And then the fact that he's a senior and just has no meaningful playing time, I feel like I know what I'm getting with him. And it's not good. I would rather stick with sort of the devil we know because I do think it's actually legitimately a better option.
I don't want a devil. Can I just not have a devil at kicking position?
It's two devils.
We need to do another search where we find a random dude to kick, like that one time we found the guy named Patty O'Hara.
Here's the thing,
kick for OU when Jimmy Stevens couldn't cut it.
We have a devil, and I don't want to alienate any potential sponsors of the pod, but we have a devil in the sense that we have a cable provider, you're kind of stuck with him and you hate him and you hate having to deal with him. And anytime you have to think about him, it's inevitably a bad thing. And you wish you could get rid of him, but you have no other option. But now we do have another option, and it's almost definitely like a phishing scam in your email box. Like, we should not click on it. We should not open it. It promises something that's just not reasonable. There's no track record there in spite of years in the league. I do not believe in Tyler Keltner. There's some fine print there somewhere that we are not seeing.
Well, I'm going to click it.
Yeah. That reminds me of my Wi-Fi my sophomore year at the apartment complex we're at, for some reason, gave me an IP address from Syracuse, New York. So I'm pretty sure that was not legit. Would be that type of provider, I imagine, like the alternative.
They're looking
Sounds like a VPN. Sounds like a VPN, but
No. It was like directly from like the Wi-Fi. If you logged on, it actually worked because you could watch like Thunder games on League Pass. But I digress.
Yes. So that's the kicking position. Elzinga at the punter, signed, sealed, delivered. That's great. We all love Elzinga here. You know, we're happy. No Josh Plaster. Get him out of here. He sucked. Luke Elzinga was the answer last year. We should all be happy. So I'm not even going to let y'all talk about that one because it's not worth breath. Just in general, who do you want to see returning punts and kicks? And I feel like, think about this, because do you want to see guys like Deion Burks back there, Billy Bowman back there, Peyton Bowen back there, guys that we know have great returning chops, but I don't want them to get hurt? Is there like any guys that you want back there that maybe is like a mid-level guy that can be fun to see, like a Zion Kearney, Bobby?
Hey, he's good at returning kicks, for kick returning. Apparently the college football game really likes it there. I don't know if real life will agree there. For kickoffs,
Zion Reagans?
Honestly, at that point, screw it. Just have everyone fair catch it.
Yes, I've been saying this for years. I agreed with Lincoln Riley with that. And you guys flamed me. You guys flamed me for agreeing with him on the pod. I got destroyed. I am all for just take it at the 25.
I will say I think partially some of that has been actually returning kicks in that game. And I'm like, why am I doing this? It's useless. Like, even a good return, I get to like the 26. Like, so what am I doing all of this for? But in terms of like a punt return, then, I think the guy has to be, in my opinion, I like Peyton Bowen a lot.
Punt returns, you just want a guy who can catch it. You want your best players catching it back there. But the kickoff is high impact. So I agree with you there. You put Peyton, you put Deion Burks back there.
Yeah. Yep.
You got
how many kicks? How many kicks occur per game on average?
Oh my God! Yeah,
like kickoffs.
How many scores? Yeah,
like 10.
Well, for an OU game, if the score was 35 to 17, that would be 8. If that puts that into perspective.
So even if you get 1 yard extra on average, that's 8 yards. That's pretty. You guys don't understand. See, as a Ducks fan, as an Oregon Ducks fan, I'm educated in the lore of Nike, and Nike's mentality was Phil Knight, when he originally came up with his running shoes, and this is not a bit, this is completely true. He realized that the weight of the shoes mattered so much more than people realized because he came from the distance running world. And he sat down and did the math, like, hey, on a 5K, if your shoes weigh 1 ounce more and you take this many steps, that could be 1, 2, 3 kilos on a marathon. Like, this is all that extra weight that you're carrying. And that was the impetus that created the beast that is Nike today. Obviously marketing, blah, 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 get into the whole business study here. But I don't know. I'm a big fan of, this is completely off topic of the individual players, but I'm a big fan of return everything and every single yard, compound those yards, especially when we have an offense who's probably just going to turn the ball over most of the time they touch it.
Well, that's you assuming that you get beyond the 25 on average more than you don't. And then obviously everyone would agree.
Well, I'd have to look into the stats on that. But on paper, I don't disagree with, hey, just, let every kickoff go into the end zone and take it at the 25. But
I mean, on average, you probably end up at the 20 at best, which is a 5-yard loss. So just waving your hand and getting 5 more than average should be the move.
You avoid turnovers, fumbling by doing that as well.
But you guys are coming from a perspective where we had someone returning kicks who arguably shouldn't even have been on the team, let alone returning kicks.
Are you talking about Gavin Freeman?
I didn't say it. You guys are really defensive about Gavin Freeman. I didn't mention a name.
I think you were definitely trying to take a weird veiled glance at Drake Stoops, maybe even.
No, I will not allow.
There are some people who do still like have the Drake Stoops shouldn't have been on the team. He wasn't even that good, which is a weird take because he was pretty damn good. But we digress at this point. So
yeah. Y'all got anything else about this?
Here's a question. Just yes or no, Jameson. Will this be a top 10 defensive unit in the country?
No.
I'm going to hedge and say top 15, but not.
I think
10.
top 20.
The offenses they face are too damn good.
Yes,
that's going to make an impact.
That's the problem, because the way the position that the position we play right now is we're in the SEC. So you put top 10 in the country versus all the other conferences. So it's gonna be hard for us. So no.
And the conference has shifted from like just being a bunch of defensive slug it out style football to being a pretty air heavy football, like style of play. I mean, just every single SEC team on this list really just loves to air it out. Tennessee, Auburn, Texas, South Carolina a little bit.
Peyton Thorne airing it out.
He's trying. Hugh Freeze wants him to, but he's gonna do his best.
Sorry, I'm an Auburn hater, and it's gonna bite me. But like, I'm hating. Sorry. That Peyton Thorne is a guy that does not scare me one bit, and that can bite me. It could, but I'm being a hater.
Look, we're gonna get bitten. We're probably gonna get bitten from the amount of hate we're going to do on Auburn and the amount of hate we've done on Hugh Freeze over the past years with him and his little bed.
I don't know, but we kind of thought we have a special place in our heart for that. I don't know. It's like we make fun of it, but it's like we're laughing with him.
Are we?
Well, we're kind of laughing at him, but also I kind of think it's funny enough to where it's like I like it because it's funny.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, so
it's not like I'm laughing at Drinkovitz because he's a freaking weirdo.
We're laughing at Drink. We're not laughing with Drink. Even though it's like different. The thing with Drinkowitz is it's like people are laughing at him and he's just acting like he's in on the joke, even though he's you know what I mean? Like just because you're acting like you're in on the joke and leaning into it doesn't make it any less stupid. It doesn't make us like it any less. I don't know. We've gone too long. Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
I got nothing. What about you, Ty?
I've got a lot of thoughts. I think we have about 30 minutes to do closing arguments here. I was looking. I'm kidding. I think, on the defenses, I think here's one. Here's a wild. I don't even know what you could call this. Hot take, wild take, whatever else. OU has the tools, even with the schedule that we play, and this is not a bit on anyone that we're playing. Even with the schedule that we play, OU could be a top 10 defense in the country. But, and here's the weird twist, I think it's entirely dependent on the running back room playing to their ceiling. Because we just can't, we would have to play really well with the time of possession to make that happen. And last final thought, quick one on the topic of running. Not to politicize the pod, but I did see someone with a tweet earlier in the week that said that they wanted some sort of national lawmaker to propose an amendment that the Air Force Academy would be required to pass the ball at least 70% of the time, which just makes sense. It's a common sense law, and we need that. The Air Force Academy cannot be the Air Force Academy and then play the ground game for 80, 85, 90% of the game. It's absurd. That belongs to Army. They need to be airing the ball out. They are, they're legally mandated to develop aerial warfare. And I would argue that applies to passing the football as well. And legally, I think they are required to be passing the ball and to be developing new plays and tactics and things there. So I would like to see that made into national law and enforced.
Well said. Well said. Well, yeah, that's so okay. So that's the end of our season preview for OU. Like we've covered the roster top to bottom, and boys, next week we have a game to preview. We're previewing Temple. I don't know how in depth we can get on Temple.
We're gonna just solely talk about Oklahoma and then how Temple's quarterback and tight end absolutely worked Bobby for like 6 straight games in college football video game.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes. It'll be fun. But yeah, no, I'm pumped. Coming up this Wednesday, we got the weekend spread week 0. Gonna be picking some games. So excited to get that kicked off. And we got some fun new rules, fun new little details, intricacies into that game that we do every single year, and I'm just super pumped about that. For sure. So, yeah, should be a fun season. And I'll give one last defensive prediction. I think we have one national award winner coming from the defense. At least one.
Okay, that's
what
we have multiple on watch lists. We have 2 preseason All-Americans. You're gonna say we have one
second team
national award
All-Americans.
winner? That's like,
but yeah, but no, I it's not a hedge. I'm just saying,
not a hedge. It's just an extremely safe.
What? Maybe a little bit. When is the last time we've had a national award winner?
On
Kyler
the
Murray?
defense?
No, on
Like,
defense.
On defense, though,
On defense.
specifically, like Curtis
We've had
Lofton.
we've had
Roy Williams.
Yeah.
No, it would have had to have been surely Gerald McCoy or something. It's been a long time.
I don't know. I can't tell you.
Yeah, so yeah, maybe not the hottest take, but relatively hottish. But all right. Anyways, that's all we got for today's show. We'll see you next time as we on the weekend spread on Wednesday to discuss week 0, make our college football playoff picks, all of that, and then I guess Sunday maybe for Temple. We'll talk about it. But yeah, until then, y'all have a good one. Boomer Sooner, everybody.